Now the Philistines gathered their army for battle. And they gathered in Soko, which belongs to Judah. And they camped between Soko and Azekah in Ephes Dammim. And Saul and the men of Israel gathered and camped in the valley of Elah, and they drew up in battle array to encounter the Philistines. So the Philistines stood on the mountain on one side, and Israel stood on the mountain on the other side, with the valley between them. Then a champion came out of the armies of the Philistines, named Goliath from Gath, and his height was 6 cubits and a span. And he had a bronze helmet on his head, and he was clothed in scale armor that weighed 5,000 shekels of iron. And he had bronze greaves on his legs and a bronze javelin slung between his shoulders. And the shaft of his spear was like a weaver's beam. And the head of the spear weighed 600 shekels of iron. And the shield bearer also walked before him. Now, he stood and he shouted to the ranks of Israel. And he said, "Why do you draw up in battle array? Am I not the Philistine, and you, the servants of Saul? Choose a man for yourselves, and let him come to me. If he is able to fight with me and kill me, then we will be your servants. But if I prevail against him, and I kill him, then you shall serve us. I defy the ranks of Israel this day. Give me a man, that I may fight with him." Now, when Saul and all the men of Israel heard the words of the Philistine, they were dismayed and greatly afraid. Now David, he was the son of an Ephrathite of Bethlehem in Judah, whose name was Jesse, and he had 8 sons. And Jesse was old in the days of Saul, advanced in years among men. Now the 3 older sons of Jesse had gone after Saul to the battle. And the names of the 3 older sons that went to the battle were Eliab, the firstborn. Second to him was Abinadab. And the third was Shammah. David was the youngest. Now the 3 older had followed Saul, but David went back and forth from Saul to tending his father's flock in Bethlehem. And the Philistine came out every morning and evening for 40 days and took his stand. Then Jesse said to his son David, "Take now for your brothers this ephah of roasted grain and these 10 loaves, and run to the camp of your brothers. And take also these 10 cuts of cheese for the commander of their 1,000. Look into the welfare of your brothers, and then bring back news of them. For Saul and they and all the men of Israel are in the valley of Elah fighting with the Philistines." So David arose early the next morning, and he put his flock with a keeper, and he took all of the supplies, and he went as Jesse had commanded him. And as he came to the circle of the camp, he saw the army going out in battle array, shouting the war cry. Israel and Philistine drawn up in battle array, army against army. So then David left his baggage with the baggage keeper, and he ran to the front lines, and he entered in order to speak with his brothers. And while he was speaking with them, behold, the champion, the Philistine from Gath named Goliath, came, took his stand stand and spoke these same words. And David heard. And when the men of Israel saw the Philistine, they fled. And the men were saying to one another, have you seen this man who is coming up? Surely he's coming to defy Israel. And the king will give great riches to the man who kills him. And will give him his daughter. And will make his father's house free in Israel. And David, hearing the men speak, said to them, what will be done for the man who kills this Philistine and takes away the reproach from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should taunt the armies of the living God? And the men spoke all in one accord and said, thus it shall be done for the man who kills him. Now, Eliab, David's oldest brother, heard when David was speaking with the men, and Eliab's anger burned against David. And he said to him, why have you come here? And with whom have you left those few sheep in the wilderness? I know your insolence and the wickedness of your heart, for you've just come down to see the battle. And David said to him, what have I done now? Was it not just a question? And he turned away from them and asked again the same question to the same people, and they answered him the same thing as before. Now when the words which David spoke were heard, they were told to King Saul, and so Saul called for him. And David said to Saul, let no man's heart fail on account of him. Your servant will go and fight with this Philistine. And then Saul said to him, you are not able to go against this Philistine and fight with him, for you are but a youth, and he has been a warrior from his youth. And then David said, your servant has killed both the lion and the bear when I was watching my father's flock. And they would come and take a lamb from the flock. I would go out after them, and I would attack them and rescue it from its mouth. And when it rose up against me, I seized it by the beard, and I struck it, and I killed it. Your servant has killed both the lion and the bear. And this uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them. For the Lord delivered me from the paw of the lion and from the paw of the bear. He will surely deliver me from the hand of this Philistine. And Saul said, go, and may the Lord be with you. Then Saul dressed David in his garments, and he put on him a bronze helmet, and he clothed him with armor, and then David girded his sword over the armor, for he had not tested them. And so David said to Saul, I cannot wear these, for I have not tested them. And David took them off. And then he took a stick in his hand, and he chose for himself 5 smooth stones from the brook for himself, which he put in his shepherd's bag, which he had with him, even in his pouch. And with a sling in his hand, he approached the Philistine. Then the Philistine approached David. And when he looked and saw David, he disdained him, for he was but a youth, and he was ruddy and handsome, and he said, am I a dog that you would come at me with sticks? And he cursed David by his gods, and he said, come to me, and I will give your flesh to the birds of the sky and the beasts of the field. And then David said to him, You come to me with a sword and a spear and a javelin. But I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have taunted. This day, the Lord will give you into my hands, and I will strike you down, and I will remove your head, and I will give the bodies of the armies of the Philistines to the birds of the sky and to the beasts of the earth, so the whole earth may know that there is a God in Israel, and that this whole assembly may know that the Lord does not deliver by sword or spear, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will deliver you into my hands. And then it happened. David drew up to come to the battle line, and the Philistine arose and moved to meet him. And David stuck his hand in his pouch, drew out a stone, slung it, and it hit the forehead of the Philistine. And the stone sank into the forehead of the Philistine, that he fell on his face to the ground. Thus, David prevailed over the Philistine with a sling and a stone. There was no sword in David's hand. And then David ran to the Philistine, and he drew out his sword from its sheath and cut off his head with it. And when the Philistines saw that their champion was dead, they fled. And all the men of Israel and Judah stood up, and they shouted, and they pursued them until all the way to the gates of Ekron. And the dead Philistines lay all along the way from Sharon all the way to Gath and Ekron. And when the Israelites returned from chasing the Philistines, they plundered their camps. Then David, with the head of Goliath, went to Jerusalem. But first, he put his weapons into his tent. Now, when David was going out to the Philistine, Saul said to Abner, the commander of his army, "Whose son is that young man?" And Abner said, "By your life, O king, I do not know." And Saul said, "Inquire whose son the youth is." So, when David had returned from killing the Philistine, Abner brought him before the king, with Goliath's head still in his hands. And the king said to him, "Whose son are you, young man?" And David replied, "I am the son of your servant Jesse, the Bethlehemite."